Hello and welcome to the Porcelain Don channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing Deadhouse Gates from Steven Erikson. Hello, and as I said, today I'm going to be reviewing book 2 in the Malazan Book of the Fallen series, Deadhouse Gates by Steven Erikson. Now this is going to be my spoiler-free review, so I'm going to be dancing around and trying to explain things without letting any spoilers slip. I will be releasing a spoiler review in a few days that will really delve into the meatier parts that I'd like to talk about also. So stay tuned, excuse me, for that. So, in the spoiler-free review, I'm going to start by dropping a spoiler, a very, very minor one. If you don't want to hear this, even this minor spoiler, cover your ears now. This book starts out a completely different place with completely different characters to the first one. Me being me, I started it, and when I realized that was the case, I was annoyed, you know? Oh my god, these characters aren't the same as the ones that I like. The setting isn't the same as the one that I like. I don't like it, I don't like it, I don't like it. Because I am an infant, and I know better than the writer what would serve the story best. I'm just kidding, obviously. But I did feel that way, as I often do when things go differently in sequels. I did really enjoy it, and so my fears and complaints were proven unfounded very quickly, which is often the case. And you would think that I would learn, but I rarely do. So, yeah, that was an issue at the start. This book itself, it starts off. The very first chapter is very malazan, even though, as far as I read so far, it seems very malazan in that it's very rich, very deep with description, very evocative with imagery, very um, richly detailed. And it left me with more questions than answers, and more questions than I had at the start. And I loved it anyway, So that was exactly how it started, and from there it just continued. I really, really enjoyed this book when I quickly got past the part that it's not the same guys. This book was excellent. It was really excellent. It was a marked step up from the first book. The first book was excellent too, but as I said, there was parts of the first book where the prose was like there was set pieces or certain conversations or stuff that were really, really well done, really finely done, and then where the linkage between these two parts was a little clumsy, or where he was trying to convey something and it was the composition of the text was a little bit clunky, so it didn't flow as well as it could. But this one was much more fluid, much more smooth. Not to say that it wasn't in depth and deep and rich, uh, maybe even more so than the first one, or maybe it's just because because it's somewhere else. But there was so much going on, such a deep level of world building, but the prose seemed a lot more finely tuned, which I really did appreciate. Not that it put me off the first one, but it was noticeable in this one. Also, I think the best part of this book, or the series so far, but especially this part that shows more in this book, is how I love world building. So the building is 10 out of 10 here. But the best part was in this book you have a number of narrative threads. You have sort of the main story, if you will, but then you have 3 or 4 other side stories that all sort of filter towards more or less the same ending as the first one, and the way that they are handled, the way that they're developed, and the way that they're paced is so respectful. There's no B tier story, C tier story, throwaway story. I feel like the level of care and attention put in the third or fourth most time-consuming strand narrative thread in this book is as much as a lot of people put into their first into the principal narrative thread. You know, I know so much about the character, these tertiary characters and these secondary characters, and they're so well sketched out, and the journey is so epic. Obviously, it's so well crafted and so lovingly crafted. I would like to know um, how much time it took to write this, because I'm guessing the first one you can have all the time in the world because you're not on a deadline. When it comes out, it comes out. You know, but the second one, normally, when the first one comes out, usually the publisher is hot on your heels because the first one is somewhat of a success, pushing you for another, so you don't get all the time in the world. Uh, and as usually as you spend so much time trying to get the first one published, you're not really thinking all that much, or at least practically, concretely, about a second one. So I'd really like to know how much time he spent on this. Because however much time he spent, if he spent 6 months, if he spent 6 years, he wrung out every last drop of story for this. It's so such a beautifully told and such an engaging story. Beautifully told, engaging characters. What can I say without spoilers? I believe one of the narrative threads in this book, you could say, yeah, probably the principal narrative thread. It has one of the most um, brilliant and touching displays of heroism that I've seen in fantasy literature. Because in fantasy literature, you tend to get, at least in my experience, these displays of heroism that are either a great feat of arms or a great personal sacrifice, or something along those very large, very bombastic, very heroic in the classical sense. But this one has it really does have a realism to it, this heroism. Anybody could do this sort of heroic deed. Anybody could. I mean, you'd have to be incredibly heroic and incredibly brave, but it's very achievable, and it's very functional heroism, even though the scale is huge. I'm sorry if it sounds like I'm being very vague and waffling, but if you've read the book, you'll know what I mean, and you'll probably agree, I hope. But I really try not to spoil it, because some of the parts of this book, when you read it for the first time, it blows your hair back. So I really want to do justice to that whilst conveying my thoughts, and not in the best fashion that I can. So that is excellent. The new setting is very, very richly done, even more so than the setting in the first book. It makes me wonder: Erikson did he study archaeology or um, classical cultures or things like that? Because there's a lot of there's a lot of things that make me think, like the way he talks about uh, ruins, or uh, pottery that you find from leftover civilizations, or uh, military auxiliaries used in an empire. Made me think of Rome. There's one huge strand of the story that made me think of Xenophon, excuse me, in the March of the 10,000. It really made me think of that, because I'm a history nerd. So it made me think if he actually studied any of this stuff, or whether it's just, whether he studied it before he started writing, or whether you just put the legwork in whilst writing these books, for writing these books. Either way, it shows that he has put the work in. He does have the base knowledge, because it shines through in the realism of his world. You see that uh, there's no new. That's I was going to say there's no new culture. But you have these primogenitor cultures that are from 500,000 years ago. They're a different species or whatever. But what I meant was, in certain contexts, you don't have new cultures or organically started cultures. It's one stems from another that's influenced by another, and so everyone is an amalgam of something else. I thought that was really well done. The action scenes are excellent. The pacing is appropriate in that most of the threads narratively are quite journey based and quite unforgiving, and you have this slog type feel, not in a negative way, but you feel like you're taking every step with these characters. So you feel like as you get to sort of 60%, 70%, 80%, you feel like you've been on this journey. You feel worn from this journey yourself, like the characters. Uh, and again, not worn in a sense where you're tired of this book, but worn in a sense that emotionally and intellectually you've had a lot of stimulation and a lot of experience going on, and you're kind of almost intellectually out of breath, as silly as that sounds. But Steven Erikson really did master this book. It's such a great book. If you have read it, tell me what you think below, whether you think I've missed anything important without any spoilers. Please, I'd like to keep this spoilers free for the handful of people that haven't read it. I'd also like to say thank you. Since I've done my first Malazan review, it's by far the most popular book, and it's by far led to my new subscribers. And I have 12 subscribers, which is unfathomable, but it seems that they're all from my Malazan review. So thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate you being here. Really appreciate you subscribing. I'll try to do your time justice by doing the books justice, because I'm really, really enjoying them. As I said, like and subscribe. Comment down below what you think. In a couple of days, I will be releasing my spoiler review, which will be much longer, and it will go into these specific parts that I really enjoyed or didn't enjoy, that I thought I wanted to chew over a little bit in discussion, but without ruining it for people who haven't read it. So thank you so much for stopping by. I'll see you on the next one. Thank you.